I'm sick of all these witches and warlocks.
I'm not happy.
I don't need Elizabeth Warren or the government giving away my money.
Calling Mike Bloomberg an oligarch has implications in this country that I think are unfair and unreasonable.
I care. That's it.
Makes you think of some rich person who got their money off of oil in Russia, who's taking advantage of a broken and dysfunctional system.
Bernie Sanders saying, the country's corrupt, our system's corrupt. Be careful about that language, Bernie. You know, be careful.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
Around the nation, Waldorf Nation. Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. We got a show for you all today. It's a big one. We got a lot of stuff I'm going to talk about today. We have, of course, we're going to talk about the QAnon Shaman, the QAnon Shaman, the Q Shaman, whatever, the wizard, the Q Shaman. That's going to be fun. We've got that. Apparently he was the defender of muffins. That's always fun. We also are talking about how QAnoners are not good at maps. They're very bad at maps, apparently. We also have Marsha Blackburn defending Neanderthals. That's an interesting story. It's a lot of fun. We got Mike Pence, who is Mike Pence, right? Or, you know, as our old friend, former President Donald Trump always used to say,
Mike Pounds.
Talk about him and how he might get replaced. That's fun. You know, lots of stories. And then, of course, if we get to it, corruption. It turns out we had a former Trump official, Transportation Department Secretary, that was using staffers to hang up like Christmas ornaments. I mean, this is some stuff, some corruption stuff, but it actually gets a lot worse because you think, Christmas Christmas decorations, totally fine, whatever. No, it actually gets a little bit worse. So anyway, we've got a fun show here. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Very helpful to us, of course, on all the different platforms that we're on. We got YouTube, we got Twitch, we got the Facebooks, we got all this stuff. So we are going to have a really good show, so stick around for that. You're going to want to share it with everybody. You're going to want to share this because it's good stuff. By the way, I do have to, let's see. Do something here in Twitch real quick. Well, maybe not real quick. But I've got to figure out what I'm doing in here. Just a second. So we're doing this live, and I should have done this before. But let's see. You know what? I'll mess with it later. How about that? We'll mess with it later. Let's get to the stories, shall we? I think we shall. Former Vice President Mike Pence has finally broken his silence about the January 6th Capitol insurrection. So now that's the same insurrection, of course, where people were shouting, "Hang Mike Pence." They weren't saying
Mike Pounds.
Well, they were saying Mike Pence, but of course, maybe if you asked them, if you ask them now, it's, oh, hang my pants. Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. Now, the reason they were, of course, mad at Mike Pence was because he refused to stop the certification of election results, which, by the way, he had no power to do so. All right. So, all right. Now, he broke his silence. Turns out he's still kind of on the Trump train, which is unfortunate. But here's what he said. Pence, according to The Hill, who was presiding over a joint session of Congress when it was certification of the Electoral College results, was interrupted by a mob of former President Trump supporters, said there were significant voting irregularities and numerous instances of officials setting aside state election law in the 2020 presidential election. So understand that Mike Pence is doubling down and still throwing his weight behind Donald Trump's assertions that the election was somehow stolen. Oh, great. Now, the former vice president said that the events, the invasion into the Capitol, of course, had deprived the American people of a substantive discussion in Congress about election integrity in America. If it weren't for those, pesky people trying to murder me, we could have had a real discussion about voter fraud in this country. So not only are you, again, throwing MAGA under the bus, but you're also giving yourself cover, saying, I was on your side all along. Please don't murder me. Yeah, it'd be real helpful, please. Okay, so now the context for these statements weren't just about Donald Trump, but also were part of an attack on the House Democrats' bill, H.R. 1. Now, that is a voting rights bill that the House passed earlier today. It expands voting, so that is naturally a pretty good thing. Now, that's unless you're a Republican, in which you think that more voting is bad. In fact, Pence said that this bill would increase opportunities for election fraud. Oh, how interesting. So now, what evidence does Mike Pence have to present to prove that? Right, to prove that expanding voting, mail-in voting, etc., would actually do that. Oh, right, it doesn't. Now, what would happen is, of course, you would allow more people to vote. Simply that. Which, I guess is fraud to you. Because Republicans don't want people voting. They want less people voting, less American citizens voting. If they're not voting Republican, they might as well not even exist, right? And that's the real fraud here. That's the crime. You deprive American citizens their right to vote because they might be, they're black, or they're students that generally vote for Democrats, college students, or they're disabled, or they don't have a gun. Yes, seriously, there are places where, that have voter ID that will accept not a student ID, but an ID for a gun. So that's what's going on in this country. All right. So now, the former vice president also argued that in the op-ed that measures included in the voting rights bill would, quote, trample the First Amendment, further erode confidence in our elections, and forever dilute the votes of legally qualified eligible voters. Read, of course, Republicans, conservative voters. But hey, do you know what actually erodes confidence in elections? When you scream about non-existent voter fraud for years. That's kind of what happens. That people tend to not believe in the results of elections when you keep saying every election is stolen because look at all the massive voter fraud coming from across from over the border, all these undocumented immigrants, all these illegals coming in to vote when they, of course, don't have voting rights and they don't actually vote. And also, by the way, you don't have any evidence of that. Why would people who generally do less crime than native born Americans? It's true. Undocumented immigrants, their one thing is they don't want to get caught and deported, right? So that makes them less likely to be criminals doing criminal action. And so why would they go and risk getting caught by fraudulently voting? That doesn't make any sense. But of course, they never really think this thing through. It just doesn't. Okay, so now, again, no evidence of widespread voter fraud. Okay, numerous studies, investigations, committee members poring over numbers, looking at voting data with a fine-tooth comb. In fact, Michigan, we just completed another audit of our election results. And guess what? What we found is that the same result holds up. Biden won Michigan fair and square. And the only thing, by the way, that was ultimately found is that Republicans happen to be the biggest danger to American democracy and voting rights by literally trying to overthrow an election. Yeah. He continues. While legislators in many states have begun work on election reform to restore public confidence in state elections, i.e. by banning more people from voting, unfortunately, congressional Democrats have chosen to sweep those valid concerns and reforms aside and to push forward a brazen attempt to nationalize elections in blatant disregard of the U.S. Constitution. Now, that, of course, happens to be a very, well, it happens to be an interpretation that takes a lot of liberties with the truth. Let's just say that. All right. Now, the actual legislation passed by House Democrats does none of those things. It would expand, essentially, opportunities to vote by mail, which was very successful in this election, despite Louis DeJoy, the Postmaster General, trying to slow down the mail to the point where it would make a lot of ballots invalid. Yeah. And also would require that states establish electronic voter registration, which makes sense. We're living in a technological society. And at this point, it would make sense to have online voter registration and give the Justice Department more authority to enforce voting rights law. Now, of course, you would have to submit proof, evidence, of course, that you are who you say you are online. And there are absolutely ways to do that. What? How do I know? Well, okay. I had to send a picture of my license to Facebook in order to monetize my live streams or to monetize it all. So seriously, Facebook requires ID at this point. Elections do, at least for registration, they would have to have a proof that you are a citizen. And so generally they do. Generally they do. And so now, that said, it appears that good old Mike Pence is lying to you. Lying to you. Because he, like most Republican politicians, have an agenda. That agenda, of course, is to reduce the number of people voting so that Republicans can still end up winning elections. So, that's it. That's the goal. And it's been their openly stated goal for a very, very long time, for many decades. And, of course, going back to the godfather of the modern conservative movement, a man named Paul Weyrich, who I tend to, feature on this channel quite a bit. Paul Weyrich, here's what he said. During a conservative meeting, he said this out loud and allowed himself to get filmed saying it. Here it is. You probably know which one it is.
They want everybody to vote. I don't want everybody to vote. Elections are not won by a majority of people. They never have been from the beginning of our country, and they are not now. As a matter of fact, our leverage in the elections, quite candidly, goes up as the voting populace goes down.
They said that out loud. It's amazing. So now keep that in mind when I tell you the next part. So now, during the Trump administration, Mike Pence also headed a voter integrity commission, right? So this was something that was supposed to root out voter fraud, right? First, it was supposed to find it, supposed to prove it, and then they can use that evidence that they found to go and do stuff like voter ID. Okay. Well, so what happened? Well, it turns out they found nothing. And actually, a lot of states considered what they were doing as overreach. How about them states' rights for you? I'm just saying. A former Democratic member of the commission also in 2018 said they never found evidence of widespread voter fraud and accused the commission of having, quote, a preordained outcome to support President Trump's claims of voter fraud. Those claims, of course, would not only sow the seed to the January 6th failed insurrection, but also empower Republican governors and congressmen to attempt to restrict voting rights. And again, that's what it is. So now here comes the biggest irony. Now, as Mike Pence makes these statements that are very pro-Trump in nature, that are backing up Trump 100%, Donald Trump's going to throw him under the bus again. Anonymous sources, I know. Grain of salt. Still, anonymous sources tell Bloomberg that Trump may be considering running and choosing a woman or person of color to be his running mate and dropping Mike Pence. Again, this is just rumor. Take it as you will. This could not come to pass. It is just anonymous sources talking to Bloomberg, so it could even be misleading. However, I put a little bit of stock in it, just a little bit, because how Donald Trump did Pence dirty after January 6th. According to Bloomberg, sources said that Trump is looking for people who stood by him through the end of his presidency and the Capitol riots. Pence, for his part, did not do that. He hid in a corner. He was on a milk carton somewhere, couch surfing with mother, looking for a new home, probably trying to avoid the people that were trying to murder him. So, and look, Donald Trump's about loyalty. We know that. He's nothing but loyalty. That's what he expects. And from what I can understand, Mike Pence was not sufficiently loyal. Now, there are Trump spokesmen that are coming out there. That's a fake news. Okay, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But still, it would make sense to me knowing what I know about Trump. So now, who would hypothetically be in the running? Well, there's some options, right? Two sources actually added that South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem is being considered on the list of potential running mates. Now, that is interesting. So Kristi Noem, of course, very, very pro-Trump, not in favor of mask mandates, any of that stuff. Okay, there you go. Others told Bloomberg that Trump would not announce if he's running until December 2023, to which, of course, afterwards would come the announcement for a possible running mate. And so, all right, there you go. Now, the former president also recently told Newsmax's Mark Halpern that he did not think that any other Republican could beat him in a primary if he decided to run again in 2024. Mike Pence was on the list. He was very, very low. I think he was somewhere pulling around 12%. It's either 4 or 12. I don't have it in front of me. So I'm not entirely sure. It's pretty low, whereas Trump has an incredibly high number. So for him, I do think that it's very possible that he would attempt to run again, to have a rematch with Biden. Okay, and so that's again, I've looked at polls where you had a solid majority of Republicans that are can't wait for a Trump-Biden rematch, and so it is possible. And if so, I mean, thinking about that possible rematch is deeply concerning. Assuming that, of course, nothing happens to Trump before then. But I see, and I know I'm gonna do the criticism of the Democrats now real quick here. Biden is not doing a great job. Now, is he doing better than Trump? Yeah, but it's super, super low bar. Understand that bar you can walk over. All right, it's in the ground essentially. But what you have here is Biden not doing good on a PR and policy front. Okay. And so I think that's going to hurt him in 2022, 2024, as long as people, of course, remember, some people do have a very, short memory span. I certainly do. But hey, that said, no unhinged tweets, right? At least. I mean, a lot of the libs are back to brunch, so they don't really care as much that Biden backed off some of his promises because, no bad tweets. So we're good. Great. But some of the promises that Trump made that Republicans are definitely going to exploit, in my opinion, is you've got the promises of the $2,000 checks, which turned into $1,400, which means that at the end of this whole thing, the Trump administration actually gave you more. And of course, the hyper targeting, the increased targeting of these checks and the cutoff. I mean, you're going to end up having more people, millions of people actually, that receive checks under Trump that are not going to receive anything under Joe Biden. So that's a bit of a disaster. Not only that, but of course we bombed Syria. We decided not to hold, or Biden decided not to hold the Saudis accountable for the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, or Khashoggi, however you say that. The important thing is, let's let Saudi Arabia go. Now, I'm not saying that Trump would do different. I'm not saying Trump would do better, but they would definitely weaponize that. Republicans have no shame. They will use whatever they can to try to go after the Biden administration and say, look at us, we're better. Not only that, but there are other things that I'm sure Republicans won't bring up. No student loan cancellation. He backed away from that. That's other stuff. But okay, these are the things generally that people will remember in 2024 if and when Donald Trump runs, or whatever Republican. Josh Hawley running as fake populist. But notably, they're going to remember that Biden gave less in stimulus money during Trump and continued bombing the Middle East, selling weapons, and not delivering on making regular Americans' lives materially any better. And so that's going to be a thing, right? And so that's what people are going to remember. That's got me very, very concerned. And so, unless Biden corrects course and really starts pushing for progressive policy, yeah. I am worried about the optics of this entire thing. First of all, if Republicans would give a little bit and giving the higher up, maybe we'd get somewhere. Don't blame Biden. Not blaming Biden. I'm just blaming the really bad optics of Biden not living up to campaign promises. So that doesn't mean that Republicans would be any better. I just said that they wouldn't. Republicans are worse, but Republicans lie all the time. And so will they shamelessly use this against him? Of course they would, because Republicans are masters of hypocrisy. And you've got to understand that. Okay. Anywho. Let me just do something real quick here. Go to the fun muffin stuff. Just pushing buttons. Jacob Chansley, also known as the QAnon Shaman, is getting ready to be in court for being part of the Capitol riot. So now he's of course well known for being the guy with the horns and the fur, and for wanting to testify against Donald Trump during his impeachment trial for I guess sending him to the Capitol. That's what he says, right? So now Trump was basically excused from that by cowardly Republican senators, and so as a result, he got off scot-free. All right. But Chansley's in a difficult position. All right. So Chansley can't really go back to the MAGA crowd. Not necessarily. I think he's going to get a little criticism for that. So here's what he's doing. He's going to try defending himself by saying, I was there, but I was trying to keep order. I was trying to protect the Capitol against some of these rioters, who I totally agreed with. Now that, of course, is a new twist. So let me show you a little excerpt from an interview with on 60 Minutes here, and then I want to read it just in case it gets nuked by copyright. So let me show you that first. Take a look.
My actions on January 6th, how would I describe them? Well, I sang a song. And that's a part of shamanism. It's about creating positive vibrations in a sacred chamber. I also stop people from stealing and vandalizing that sacred space, the Senate. Okay, I actually stopped somebody from stealing muffins out of the break room.
Well, thank God. Thank God for the muffins. You know, the muffins that you were able to come back to and enjoy after a violent mob nearly murdered you? That was me. You're welcome. I saved the muffins, guys. The muffins were in great danger. And, well, You know what? I'm so glad that you were there to heroically step in and get in the way of those dastardly muffin thieves that were coming to steal those delicious little confections. Yes, thank you so much. You're a hero. No, okay. I'm not really sure that's a very good defense. Seriously, though. I mean, songs aside, the man was there for one reason, and that was to overturn a lawful election. Whether or not he was out there giving moral support, singing songs, LARPing as a real-life bard/shaman to boost his raid, it doesn't really matter so far as the law says, okay? And the law, his actions were in violation of said law, okay? And at the very least, again, he was taking part in an insurrection. He had a weapon. It was a sharp spear tip with a flagpole, or on a flagpole, that could be used as a deadly weapon. And so not only that, but they weren't where they were supposed to be. And they had a goal of overturning a lawful and legal election and committed these crimes on behalf of Donald Trump. And of course, they're not the first to have done so. Donald Trump seems really good at getting people to do crime on his behalf. All right. And so that said, there's more. So now reporter Laurie Segal also asked Chansley if he regretted his loyalty to Trump. Here's what he said. Quote, I developed a lot of sympathy for Donald Trump because it seemed like the media was picking on him and seemed like the establishment was going after him unnecessarily or unfairly. And I had been a victim of that all my life, whether it be in school or at home. So in many ways, I identify with a lot of the negative things that he was going through. My God. So this is what irritates me. This is what frustrates me, okay? It really gets my goat. It burns my ass, all right? Grinds my gears, whatever you want to say, all right? Donald Trump is not one of us. He's not one of you. He is not a regular person. He's not a working class person. He is a rich man-child narcissist who has never heard the word no in his life. Okay? Always gets what he wants. Always has. At least up until his political career. All right? So he is a con man. A con artist to the nth degree. And I say he's a con man generally, in reference to his business, but also clearly this is his biggest con. To make somebody who has the most power and privilege in the world, was president of the United States, to make that person with all that power and privilege and money into the biggest victim is just, in the eyes of his supporters, it is the biggest con that I have ever bore witness to. It's amazing. I don't know how this happens. That is impressive. And also, I mean, incredibly dangerous. He is not one of you. Never had to struggle. Grew up incredibly wealthy, inherited money from daddy. And yet you've got these people that believe that no, it's that guy. It's the rich guy. It's the boss. That's the real victim. That's the real victim. It really is amazing. How? So now on that. Now, do you notice how Republicans love to say that, people who have been traditionally victimized, and you could see it. There's documentation of this, right? African Americans, indigenous people, LGBTQ plus community. They all love to say that those groups are participating in victim mentality. Victims, you're just perpetual victims all the time. You just want to be a victim. Whereas, and by the way, they call them victims when these people, these communities who have had a lot of things stacked against them, push back and call out actual injustices. But yet, these people, many of whom are wealthy white CEOs, police officers, ex-military, QAnon cultists, they gave up their families, by the way, in pursuit of unhinged conspiracies. They want to tell us that they and Donald Trump are the real victims of this entire thing. You have got to be kidding. You know what? Hold on. Give me a break. All right.
Give me a break.
There we go. That's what I was looking for. It's by the way, here comes the best part. All right. So now he still defends Trump. Quote, I honestly believed and still believe that he cares about the Constitution. Donald Trump's never read the Constitution. Donald Trump doesn't know what's in the Constitution. He knows the Second Amendment and the First Amendment. That's about it. And he thinks his First Amendment extends to his Twitter account, which is ran by a private company. And he believes the Second Amendment. He doesn't even believe in the Second Amendment, really. He had once talked about taking all the guns during his administration. I bet y'all forgot about that one. He only believes in things when it's beneficial to himself. But he continues, he cares about the American people, and that's also why, and you know what wounded me so deeply, and why it disappointed me so greatly that I and others did not get a pardon. He's crying about not getting a pardon. Oh, wonderful. Hey, you didn't get a pardon because he doesn't care about you. He doesn't. He doesn't give a goddamn about you at all, or anyone else for that matter. Do you know who he did pardon? Well, I mean, he pardoned a bunch of people, but one of them was Steve Bannon. Okay, Steve Bannon. The guy that stole money literally from Trump supporters and put it right in his pocket instead of the stupid wall project that, he raised money for. And normally I don't feel bad when, people throw away their money and something stupid. For example, the wall grift, right? And that's what it was. They raised a whole bunch of money for sections of a border wall that they didn't even have legal authority to build. And so a lot of that money ended up going in Steve Bannon's pocket, as well as the other guy, Colfage, I believe. And so he put it in his pocket. He bought cars, took trips, had fancy dinners, basically spent that money on himself. And that's who Donald Trump gave a pardon to, because Steve Bannon is useful. Steve Bannon will help Donald Trump continue to get grifts, continue to get money from Trump supporters. It's true. And so, but, this guy, Chansley, you have outlived your usefulness, my friend. You are a failure to Donald Trump, personally, because you didn't steal the election for him. All right? He wants nothing to do with any of you unless he can find a new way to monetize you. And I think he already has, by the way. And that's what it is. Donald Trump's already begun asking for donations to his political action committee. So that's already started. The overall point here, as I keep saying over and over, in MAGA world, there are only two kinds of people, and that is the grifters and the marks, the con men and the useful idiots, the person that's shooting someone on Fifth Avenue and the ones who let him get away with it. Which one are you, MAGA guys? All right. One more here for the QAnon people. I'm gonna roll today. Save the muffins. Save the muffins. All right. Can you believe it? Today is the day that supporters of QAnon believe that Donald Trump would be restored to power. Now, of course, that beautiful day came and went, or at least supposed to happen around noonish or something. It's a long conspiracy. But basically, this conspiracy is, that it's basically led to Washington, D.C. beefing up security just in case Trump supporters wanted to repeat of January 6th, because they believed that Donald Trump would be restored to office, would ride on a wave, right, of Trump and QAnon supporters, and somehow become president. Now, the failure of this to happen, of course, led to a new conspiracy that Washington, D.C. no longer exists because they can't find it on a map. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. Okay. So now this all happened on Telegram, right? Now on Telegram, some big brain conspiracy theorists are now pointing to the absence of the DC on Google and Apple Maps. Washington is there, but no DC to support the claim that Trump will be would have been inaugurated. Okay. So one QAnon conspiracy theorist, Ghost Ezra on Telegram, said, quote, "Did maps always just say Washington? Thought it said Washington, D.C." So, all right. Now, if you do approximately 5 seconds of internet research, you will find out that Google doesn't and never really has labeled the nation's capital with D.C. It does, of course, identify the District of Columbia on state boundaries, but apparently that is way too confusing. One person wrote, "I just searched Washington, D.C. on my phone and Apple Maps, and it just shows Washington, no D.C. Uh-oh. Oh, no. The D.C., it's missing. What happened?" Another follower responded to this by saying, "This is the same for Google Maps and MapQuest. DC is dissolved." Or maybe it's the deep state globalist agenda stealing DC away so that you wouldn't find it. Deep state. They move in mysterious ways. Or DC has been canceled. There you go. There's that too. Or, maybe there's another much more simpler possibility. And that's maybe because you're stupid. You might be dumb. And it's definitely, I think, a sound theory that I've been working on. And I seem to have a lot of corroborating evidence for that theory. It's not concrete yet, but I'm working on this theory, and I got a lot of proof. More proof of them being stupid than we can find of voter fraud. By the way, Trump supporters also complained earlier, before January 6th, that Google and Apple Maps were not providing direction to Washington ahead of the Stop the Steal rally, which of course means something big tech, censorship, deep state, Google, Soros money, whatever, right? And maybe Jewish space lasers. I don't know. They might have something to do with it. Or once again, you're just not a smart person. I mean, others made it. So, and on that, to be fair, a lot of Telegram users were like, "Oh, no, dude, no. Actually, this is kind of normal that you didn't know that, but that's okay. I'm going to educate you on this. All right. In fact, here's one user said, "I lived in Alexandria for 4 years, and it's always shown Washington on MapQuest, Woz, Google Maps, etc. Since it's Washington, D.C., it just shows the immediate locality and not the state." Another one added, "It always said Washington in the middle of the map and then Washington, D.C. at the bottom. This is normal because the name would cover too much of the map." Oh, okay. Yeah, sure, yeah. Others uploaded photos of road atlases from as early as 1986. So these guys are bringing receipts. Respect for that. To show that the practice of omitting D.C. was not new. Another person wrote, "I live in the D.C. metro area. I think they've always just said Washington." Oh, okay. See? Another person adds, "No, on this one, it really did always just say Washington. Washington being the name of the city, Google Maps doesn't show the name of the state, which is what the D.C. part is, even though it's technically not a real state." Which is why, of course, the Democrats are calling for D.C. statehood. Would make sense. But, then again, likely story, patriots. That sounds exactly what something or somebody that's an Antifa agent of the deep state would say. I'm just saying. Patriots. Look, what's really happening is that they dissolved DC, and it's a deep state effort to stop you from making it. You must resist. You must resist deep state, the globalist agenda. Now's the time to stare at your map aimlessly for freedom. Trump. For you. Oh boy. Oh my goodness. All right. I'm going to take a quick break here. We're going to come back. We got the Marsha Blackburn story, and then we've got an ethics probe involving Elaine Chao. So, good stuff. Stay right here. I will be back in just a couple of, like a minute. Just got to get my stuff around. So, we're going to do that. And I'm also going to read some super chats if we have any, and all that wonderful stuff. And then more stories. So, stay right here. Around the nation.
You're full of shit. Every goddamn thing out of you people's mouths doesn't come true.
Oh, wow, I'm sorry.
Everybody, welcome back to the show. Around the nation right here, Waldorf Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. So, all right. Let's read a super chat here, a couple of them. Yes, I'm working on that soundboard. As you can see, I'm putting more sound effects on there daily. Well, okay, maybe not daily, but you know what I'm saying. I'm putting them there. Let's see, Danko Bangle, with a couple of them saying Republicans in the Senate are meeting with Manchin. Manchin and GOP may block the COVID-19 bill. Because I'm not really all that surprised. But that would be disastrous. Did I see Alex saying he regrets knowing Donald Trump? Yes. I covered that story yesterday. Check that out. I got the video up, and you can check it out after the show. Let's see. Let's go over here to Twitch. Lots of stuff going on Twitch here. Twitch community's blowing up. All right, so a lot of stuff here. First, regular Mole Rat Dragon. Thank you for the 200 plus bits. Much appreciated for the biddies. Adrian Lieb giving out. Thank you for gifting that tier 1 sub and for subscribing for 5 months with Prime. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Granny Dragon, thank you for gifting that tier 1 sub. Whoever received a tier 1 sub from Granny Dragon, make sure to thank them. Then I want to thank Tumbles25 for the biddies as well. Thank you. I appreciate that. Regular Mole Rat Dragon, thank you for gifting the 5 tier 1 community subs. Very generous of you. Thank you so much. That goes to help the channel. Thank you, everybody who's received a community sub from regular Mole Rat Dragon. Give them a thanks. Much appreciated. And Crazy Hawaiian and PA also gifted a tier 1 community sub to the community. Thank you so much for that. You all are amazing and awesome. So, in fact, I believe that deserves one of these here. Let me find it. It's always, I moved things around earlier.
Amazing.
There we go. Thank you so much. I got an amazing community both on YouTube and on Facebook and Twitch. You're all amazing. You're all amazing. You're all amazing. By the way, Dango Bango says, apparently behind closed doors, of course, Manchin is pro-Trump. Well, we knew that. Definitely. We knew that. All right. Let's go to Marsha Blackburn and some Neanderthals. Marsha Blackburn is getting mocked for a recent defense of Texas Governor Greg Abbott. So now, Greg Abbott got a lot of pushback for opening up Texas 100% and removing mask mandates completely, which angered both medical professionals as well as local Texas officials, and other states, of course, followed suit. Texas, Tennessee, for example, in removing these mask mandates. So that's a pretty dumb move. It's a political move. One which President Joe Biden, of course, attacked as dumb, but he used a specific term here, and so I want to show you a video of that. Let's take a look.
These masks make a difference. We are on the cusp of being able to fundamentally change the nature of this disease because of the way in which we're able to get vaccines in people's arms. We've been able to move that all the way up to the end of May to have enough for every American, to get every adult American to get a shot. And the last thing we need is the Neanderthal thinking that in the meantime, everything's fine, take off your mask, forget it. It still matters.
All right. Hey, look, that's a pretty solid point. All right. And I agree with him. Okay. It's pretty dumb. It's pretty dumb to go backwards on the whole mask thing, right? And so, no, the Neanderthal thing, of course, that's supposed to be an insult, whatever. Okay, sure. Compared to Trump, it's fairly tame, right? So I'm used to much worse insults, but of course, conservatives, outraged, apoplectic. Oh my God, he's calling you stupid! Because that's what that's supposed to be. And yes, he is, because it is stupid. Opening up early during the middle of a pandemic is in fact kind of dumb. Texas, for example, Texas opening up 100%, no restrictions whatsoever, no mask mandates, and not allowing cities and localities to even make the decision whether or not they will have their own mask mandates. Can't do that. And they also can't order restaurants in their areas to do their own mask mandates. So, business owners have to accept customers coming in maskless and can't do anything about it. So that's pretty sad. Now, that's it. Texas has only vaccinated, and why this is so dangerous, they've only vaccinated less than 10% of their citizens. You need about 90% for herd immunity. So now once we reach that, within a few months, we should safely be able to open up and go back to living, which is great. Until then, of course, we're going to have to be careful. The virus can and has mutated, and we need to cut off as much as possible from infecting new people and giving it a chance to mutate in another way, save we go back to step one. Because my nightmare scenario is that it mutates to the point of where it becomes resistant to the vaccine. So far, that has not happened. That's why it's the nightmare scenario. That's why I'm concerned with. And I'm not saying that will definitely happen. I'm saying it could happen. It's a concern of mine. Okay? And so maybe I'm being a little worrisome about it. Sure. And you could say, "Hey, Jeff, calm down. It's not going to be that bad. That might not happen. It's very very low chances, right?" Now the other reason that opening is dumb, and it doesn't have anything to do with my anxiety, is that it still is infecting people. People will still get sick. Hospitals still get full. People will end up dying waiting for treatment. That to me makes no sense because we have a vaccine now. All we need to do is just hang tight a little bit longer, right? And then, once we all get it, bars and Applebee's for everybody. It's just hold on. Just a little bit. All right? And we're literally just a couple of months away from beating this thing and finally starting to open back and go up to some semblance of normal. Mississippi, what are you doing? Texas, what are you doing? Tennessee, what are you doing? Why you got to do us dirty like that? All right, got to do us dirty. So now, as I said before, conservatives, they're upset about this. They're triggered by this. They're not happy. Marsha Blackburn, however, what she's going to do is she's going to try to take the Neanderthal insult, and she's going to try to be smart. She's going to use that big brain of hers, right? And she is going to turn it back around into a positive. Take a look.
Is Tennessee guilty of Neanderthal thinking, Senator?
Well, Stuart, we were called Neanderthals when I led the fight against imposition of a state income tax in Tennessee. So you know what I did? I started the Neanderthal caucus because Neanderthals are hunter-gatherers. They're protectors of their family. They are resilient. They're resourceful. They tend to their own. So I think Joe Biden needs to rethink what he is saying.
All right. Okay. It sounds like these Neanderthals are real, real stand-up fellows. It sounds like she would do very well in the Neanderthal vote. There's this one tiny problem. Neanderthals are dead. They're dead. As a distinct species of human being, they are dead. So she's a bit late by about 40,000 years. The irony is, of course, that they died either as a result of catastrophic climate change, disease, or a combination of both. They were replaced by early European modern humans who, by the way, they did interbreed with Neanderthals. As a result, modern human beings do have genetic material from Neanderthals. It's within our DNA. But, generally, it's a small amount of genetic material. So effectively, there are no living Neanderthals on Earth today. So Biden's statement, a little bit cringe, let's be honest with you, because basically substituting stupid with Neanderthal. Why not say stupid? It's stupid thinking. It's dumb thinking. It's thinking that is not smart. It is not effective. Okay. But Marsha, that was also not smart. Do you even science, girl? No, of course not. She does not. I mean, it might help. Again, like I said, Neanderthal, kind of cringe, like old folks cringe. Weak attempt to try to turn it around. Her weak attempt is so much cringier. Honestly, I feel real bad for her. I just do. All right. So now, strap in. We've got a very long ethics scandal. So let's do it. Trump's former Secretary of Transportation, Elaine Chao, we have learned, was under investigation for numerous ethics violations. Now, this is according to documents that were released earlier this week. Now, the Transportation Department's internal watchdog had found some evidence of these violations and referred them to the Justice Department for prosecution back in December. Now, that, of course, the Department of Justice ended up declining this as it was still under the Trump administration. Now, investigators from the Transportation Department of Office of Inspector General said Chao had used government employees to perform private tasks, some of which were meant to aid her father and his shipping company, the Foremost Group. So I'm going to get into a little bit of detail about this. Now, the report said that Transportation Department staff were told to help promote the elder Chao's biography and to maintain a list of his awards. Chao also told federal employees to send the biography to the chief executive of a major U.S. corporation to request that he write a foreword, according to the report. It also noted evidence that the department's former director of public affairs had drafted and launched a media and public relations strategy in order to build his profile. Now, Elaine Chao's father doesn't work with the government. So why are government employees and government resources going to boost Mr. Chao? I got nothing against Mr. Chao, but I would rather my tax money don't go to helping someone else that, you know, with their private business. Okay. And so it also noted, that this is incredibly problematic. Okay. So it is noted in here that they found this corruption and they tried to bring this corruption to the Department of Justice, and the Department of Justice wasn't having it. And so the Department of Justice is basically went along with this corruption. I mean, using your position to boost your family and ordering people, by the way, to do private stuff for you that they have no business doing, total corruption. Total corruption. Now, another example here of that corruption, Chao had tapped public employees for personal tasks, such as arranging Christmas ornaments. Investigators said, we're paying for that. I don't want to pay for that. I don't give a damn about arranging your Christmas ornaments. Why are we doing this? Why? Now, of course, that's a small infraction, right? Worse is obviously using your office, your position, to boost the family business, and that is the major corruption here. Okay. Now, again, the Trump Justice Department refused to act on it because they don't care about corruption. And in fact, they love to use public assets in order to help their own family businesses. Trump had famously done that without any sort of reservation. And as a result, the U.S. Attorney's Office at the time stated that there may be ethical and administration issues to address, but there's not any predication to open a criminal investigation. Investigators from the Inspector General's office said. The IG's office said it looked into allegations that Chao had improperly steered resources to Kentucky, which her husband, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, represents in the Senate. However, they did not find any evidence of that. So McConnell dismisses the report and says that Chao did not steer funds to Kentucky, and so far there's no evidence of that. So, okay, if there wasn't any evidence to prove that, then all right, they looked into it, they didn't find anything, that's fine. Now, that is going to factor in later on in the story of her defense of all the other stuff. So now in her defense, Chao and her supporters would point to the areas where the Inspector General didn't find any wrongdoing and use that as an example of, well, see, I didn't do those things that were wrong, so I couldn't have done anything wrong. Checkmate, libs. Quote, this report exonerates the secretary from baseless accusations and closes the book on an election year effort to impugn her history-making career as the first Asian American woman appointed to the president's cabinet and her outstanding record. Oh, good. The Republicans are using IDPOL now. Yay. Who cares? Like, who says Republicans don't care about identity politics? They play it all the time to defend themselves. That's what they do. So, no, Republicans actually always care about identity politics. They just love to weaponize it. Now, the spokesman also declined to respond to the potential ethical problem areas identified by the Inspector General, instead pointing to supportive comments from Republicans in Congress who were totally unbiased about this, obviously, including Representative James Comer, who said in a statement that the report, quote, makes clear the Democrats' partisan attacks launched against former Secretary Chao are baseless. Ah, yes. But they just sidestepped the whole thing. You didn't address this at all. And yet they're basically the meme at this point. My job here is done. She didn't do anything. Maybe that's a bad example. But okay. Anyway, they sidestepped the whole thing. And they're basically saying because one of these things didn't pan out, well, none of them could be true. Ah, great. But here's the thing. That's not true at all. In fact, investigators described a series of potential ethical issues. For example, Chao instructed political appointees to contact the Department of Homeland Security about the status of a work permit application submitted by a foreign student studying at U.S. University who was a recipient of the Chao family philanthropy, according to investigators. That appears, of course, to be personal favors. So you can't really do that. That is corruption. It's small time, of course, but it is corruption. In another example, Chao told government employees to include her relatives in preparations for high-level meetings that were to take place in 2017 in China, where investigators said her family members were to participate alongside of senior U.S. officials. Local officials from China's Jiangsu province and Chao's father met in her office at the Transportation Department's Washington headquarters in May of 2017 to discuss the trip, along with representatives of unspecified holding companies, investigators said. Now, the trip was ultimately canceled after people got wind of it and raised concerns, according to a report from the New York Times. Now, investigators also described Chao using work time of department employees, personal matters, again, the Christmas ornament thing, which is, again, super ridiculous. They work for the government, not for you, okay? Like, if you want a personal assistant, hire one yourself. You got the money. You got the money. I swear, Republicans love to talk about corruption in government and then prove that there's corruption in the government by doing corruption. Now, investigators also raised the issue of Chao appearing jointly on videos with her father. One such video raised particular concern because it featured the secretary talking about official matters, such as the administration's priorities for transportation, as well as commentary about the written biography of her father, according to a letter from Deputy Inspector General Mitch Bem to Representative Peter DeFazio. DeFazio, of course, was the one who raised objections in the first place. Now, the letter from Bem described the formal investigation into potential misuses of position. It was accompanied by a redacted version of the resulting report, which outlined evidence uncovered and the ethical rules at issue. Now, this seems to be obvious low-level corruption in government, using the position to benefit herself and her family business. That is wrong. You can't actually do that. You're not supposed to do that. That said, we had a president, we had an administration that was chock full of that. I mean, openly, brazenly, among doing 700 other different corrupt things, which is why it actually seems kind of tame, even though it is a clear ethics violation. And I hate to say it because this is an issue. Corruption is wrong, corruption is bad, and we should go after corruption. That said, the Justice Department didn't give a goddamn. They really didn't. And of course, understandable, under William Barr, they didn't care about this. Okay? They didn't. And they actually offered no actual response to questions on their decision not to pursue the matters documented in this report. That report and other documents obtained by congressional investigators demonstrate that Secretary Chao had used her official position and taxpayer resources for the benefit of herself and her family. Representative Carolyn Maloney said that in a statement, quote, Secretary Chao's flagrant abuse of her office provides further evidence that additional ethics and transparency reforms are needed. Now, is that likely to happen? No. No, it's really not. And understand, like, I would love for them to investigate and actually hold someone accountable for doing this type of low-level corruption. But I would be very surprised if anyone did. Oh, but come on, the Biden administration, the Biden Justice Department. I don't think they're going to care. I really don't think they care. Besides, Mitch McConnell, very powerful in the government. He might be minority leader, but he has a lot of clout in the government. And so I'm just really like, I don't think it's going to happen. I just don't think it's going to happen. And here's the thing. People in power rarely ever give a damn about any of this type of corruption. The only time that they actually care is when they can use this as a political cudgel against their opposition. Okay. And that's what I see. All right. This is what's going to end up being, we're going to use this against Mitch McConnell, which, look, Is he part of the corruption? Is his wife absolutely corrupt? Yes. Yes, it is. But we should instead actually be going after these people, not because of political reasons. We should go after them because it's wrong. Because it is wrong and it is corrupt. And we shouldn't have a corrupt government, but we do. And so there are not going to be any sort of real consequences to this. And there should be, but there will not be any consequences. And that is, again, because we have a fundamentally broken and corrupt system, a corrupt country. So no, I am not optimistic that Biden's Department of Justice is going to pick this up. I'm not expecting anything to come of this at all. Other than, of course, ads. Midas Touch released a new ad. Look at how corrupt Elaine Chao is, and she's the wife of Mitch McConnell, who also, by extension, is corrupt. Yes, that's true. I mean, not just by extension, but you look at Mitch McConnell's career, you can obviously see that he's corrupt. But so's like pretty much everyone else in Congress almost. And so call me cynical, but I don't see anything happening. I don't see the Biden administration going after corruption in government because it's all corruption. And that's all, regardless, of the party that's in charge. There's always going to be this sort of low level corruption. And I'm not saying that Democrats and Republicans are 100% same. No, I'm not. The Trump administration did far more open, brazen corruption. But I'm saying is that to an extent, and I really hate both sidesing this, but I'm going to have to in some form, but know that it is not equal, that it is not representative. Republicans, especially Donald Trump, is far more openly corrupt than other administrations, but also these other administrations were still corrupt to some extent. And so that's the unfortunate truth of this. And it is really pretty depressing. Okay. Anyway, so that's all I got for you today. Went over time, so that's good. All right. So thank you to all the new followers. By the way, please consider being a subscriber on Twitch, or also a subscriber on YouTube. Like us on Facebook, all that wonderful stuff. You really help us out. I do appreciate that for all the follows and all this stuff. So, I love you all. Thank you so much. We'll be back tomorrow. We got more stories here that we're going to talk about. So tune in tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern, right here, Waldorf Nation. Thank you. Love you guys and gals and everyone in between. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, everybody. See you later.
Tighten up my meat. I like my meat tight.
Wet ass keyword.
Please clap.
Amazing.
I'm sick of all these witches and warlocks.
Don't you want to please me?